I'm going to tell you why I don't think this offense is a mirage, but we got the numbers guy coming on to tell me if I'm right or if I'm wrong. Locked On Badgers.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badgers fam? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day. Really do appreciate everybody tuning in. Today's episode brought to you by Game Time. Download Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Today we're talking about concerns for this basketball team. Just how good are Tonje and Blackwell? Plus, from a number standpoint, how good is this offense? How much of this is a mirage? We got GardYourFickel on, Badgers basketball and football analytic expert. Always gets smarter when he comes on. And I wanted to kick this to you because I have some takes on this. I think this offense is for real. I've said it because I think the looks that they're generating are consistently good looks and their actions that are repeatable. They're good shots by people who are taking shots in their comfort zone. But what do the numbers say about this offense? How much of this is real, sustainable? How much of this is we played 7 games?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a small sample size. I mean, I would say that I wouldn't necessarily fully trust the quote unquote metrics until at least 10 games into the season. But by all metrics right now, we're top 20 in every, whether you're looking at Evan Maya, Torvik, Haslametrics, KenPom, all top 20. And so I definitely think it's legit. And we're doing it in kind of maybe not always the ways we've done it in the past. I mean, our turnover rate is okay, but not definitely to the elite levels that we've seen in the Bo Ryan era. Our effective field goal percentage is up. That's been a big key this year is they're taking a lot of threes, making a pretty decent percentage of them. And then the one area where they're a lot better than kind of the last few years, and really the Greg Gard era, is kind of their free throw efficiency. So that's one of the things that I track. Free throw attempt rate is a lot from a KenPom standpoint, what he tracks, but I'm just kind of adding in the free throw percentage. And obviously we've shot really, really well from the free throw line, and obviously Tonje, but others as well, getting to the line at a very high rate. All of those things combined, from a metric standpoint, is putting us in a really good spot from adjusted efficiency.
Well, and it's a lot of efficient shots, right? If you're getting to the free throw line, you're putting pressure on the rim, you're scoring there, and then you're hitting threes. Now, there's mid-range assassins on this team too. Blackwell will get in the mid-range, but it's a lot of efficient looks. I do want to ask you this. How much credit do you give Greg Gard? Because I said it kind of right away watching this team is different. This team plays differently. And I think the perfect example of that is yesterday's game, and this is a terrible kind of basketball play, but it speaks to the confidence in the way they're playing now. Jack Ginnicky pulls up 3-on-1 and takes a 3, right? With one, you want to lay up there. Make no mistake. That's not but the confidence that they're playing with, the fact that they're running in transition to shoot threes, I think it's really impressive that Gard has been able to kind of shift the way he's traditionally coached offensive basketball.
Yeah, that's another thing. And, one thing I get perturbed of, with the analytics front is we are playing significantly faster, much more like the 2022 last year of Johnny Davis. We're playing a lot faster. And that's why we're seeing, the 80-point, 100-point ball games that we have is we're just getting a lot more possessions up. But I think that does play to our strengths, and this new offense that Gard's brought in with Kirk Penny. You watch the Badgers play and you watch Connecticut play. That it's not all that different. Now, Connecticut runs a lot more directed actions from Hurley, but what's going on out there, all of the back screening actions, continuous movement off the ball with, dribble handoffs, pick and roll actions. I mean, it's almost like for like. And it's not a mirage to say that we're going to continue to get good looks like this, because personnel wise, we've got 4 or 5 guys out on the floor at all times who can shoot the ball. And that is what makes that offense thrive, is putting the off-ball defenders into conflict when you've got pick and roll situations, dribble handoff situations where guys are like Tonje, Blackwell, who can get downhill. But then you've also got Kamari McGee, who has been really, really great surprise in how he's shot the ball. Winter as well. Crowell hasn't shot it very well this year, but historically, really good 3-point shooter. You kind of surround everything that's going on within this offense and the personnel wise and what we're showing the ability to do. And it's not shocking at all that we're putting up the numbers that we are.
It feels like this should have been, and we talked about it in the offseason. I think even you came on the show, we talked about it. It felt like this was the vision, but I don't know if anybody expected it to be this clean. Some of that's because you keep bringing in a guy like John Tonje, who's now averaging 20 plus per game.
Yeah.
How is what Tonje is doing? And specifically, I want to ask you, I'm really fascinated by your take here. When you get in the Big Ten, traditionally, they aren't calling quite as many fouls as you get out of conference.
Yeah, no, I think there's definitely going to be a slide back in that regard. Just based on the physicality of the Big Ten, and you get a reputation a la Brad Davison of drawing these types of fouls. With him it was the charges, but he does. There is some aspect to his game where he's kind of flopping a little bit on the drives. Kind of the head tilt back when there's an initial contact. We'll see how that trends. I could definitely see that going in the wrong direction for Tonje for sure.
I would say too, and I agree with you, by the way, I think that trends down. I think that's one of the early season small sample size things that's not going to sustain at that level throughout the course of a season. I also think he's going to shoot like 5 or 6 a game though. Like there's a floor to his game because he attacks the rim consistently, pretty physical. Where there's some guys who attack the rim, they're so quick, they just kind of get there before the help defense comes. That's not Tonje. Tonje gets help defense. He takes some contact. So I think he's consistently going to shoot free throws, but not at this clip.
Yeah, I mean, we're at 41.2% free throw attempt rate. For most of the Greg Gard area, we're below 30%. So even if we trend back a little bit, that's still much elevated. And again, the shooters on this team, the efficiency with which those trips give us from an offensive standpoint is massive. So even if it does slide a little bit, getting there, he puts him and Blackwell put a lot of pressure on the rim. And we talked about it last year, Blackwell and his ability to get to the free throw line as well. If you continue to just put your head down and put pressure on the rim, and that's something that this offense allows, is it gives you a lot of downhill straight line drive opportunities, even more so when you've got shooters on the outside. That there's going to be a lot of opportunities. To your point, I don't think it's going to be at this high of a level for the full year.
Yeah. To your point too, and I think it's a really good one with the pressure Blackwell and Tonje put on the rim. The way they're able to do that, but now you have a shooter weak side corner, you have a shooter strong side corner, you have Klesman on the wing. Those defenses are in such a bind. And now Greg Gard and Kirk Penny have added some actions into this offense. Like I did one today when they throw it into Gard, there's kind of an immediate back screen cut from Tonje. Like there's some really fun action into this, but it's that continuous movement where you have a bunch of guys who space the floor. It's really tough. And that's that principle right there, having a team full of shooters who can also drive and make smart decisions, veteran type players. I think that's why this offense isn't going to go away. You can throw it into Krause, surround him with shooters. And in some sense, it's just simple basketball, man.
The scariest part is Steven Crowell is playing well below where he's capable of from scoring the basketball. Now he's doing fantastic work of distributing and kind of running the dribble handoffs, passing out of his post touches, out of the high post when teams have gone zone on us. He's done fantastic from that point, but he hasn't really shown what he's capable of in one-on-one post scoring yet. So teams better hope that that doesn't come out of them because there really won't be many ways, if any, to really guard us.
Well, if you're an opposing coach coming up, you're scouting the Badgers, you have a really good perimeter wing defender. Do you put him on Blackwell or Tonje?
Tonje.
No, I think so. I kind of wonder if Blackwell has been more the brunt of opposing defenses, which has allowed Tonje to go off a little bit early in the season.
Yeah, no, I think that's probably fair. I think Blackwell doesn't necessarily have the size where I think you could put a smaller defender and they could get away with a little bit added quickness, but he's not going to necessarily hurt you in the post as Tonje would if you have your lesser wing defender on him. Which, to your point, probably probably why he might be eating a little bit more.
But I think that's the good problem with this offense. I mean, the good thing with this offense is a team's going to need 2 good perimeter wing defenders. And there's teams that are going to play that have that. Like the Big Ten has wing defenders, but it makes it difficult because you can't just point your defense. Like when the Johnny Davis year is a great example of this. As that year went on, the defense just adjusted and said, every pick and roll, we're blitzing him. We're getting the ball out of his hands. And you can't beat us otherwise. You can't do that with this team. There's too much help around. What's the biggest worry you have with this offense outside of maybe some of the numbers regressing a little bit? Is there something statistically from a number standpoint or just an eye test standpoint you've looked at and you said, that's the one thing I don't love?
This is one of the things I've always kind of had beef with Bill Ryan and Greg Gard is I don't think they crash the glass as much as they could. And, when you have an off shooting night and you're not crashing the glass, you're missing out on a ton of opportunities, especially so when we're taking as many threes as we do. There's a fairly decent correlation to the amount of threes that you take and the propensity to get offensive rebounds, just longer rebounds, guys out of position, things like that. And I don't think we're a fantastic fast break defense team. And there's a significant trade-off there of throwing guys to the glass and not being able to stop transition buckets. But I think sometimes I see that we send all 5 guys back when, there's opportunities where, if we crash 1 or 2, there's probably, 2 to 3 offensive rebound opportunities a game that we're giving up on. And just given how methodical we can be and how good our action is, there's probably a really strong chance that we're going to get a good look off a second chance opportunity. So the fact that we give those up at too high of a clip, in my opinion, is probably the one thing when we're not shooting it well is gonna bite us.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And there's certainly going to be games this year where we don't shoot it quite well. We've already seen it happen. So that's a good point. Coming up next, we're going to keep GardYourFickel on here. We're going to talk a little bit about the rotation and maybe why he thinks Amos has had a hard time cracking that rotation. That's coming up next, Locked On Badgers. First, a quick break for our friends of the show over at Game Time. I talk about Game Time a lot. Listen, let's go do stuff together. I mean, that's an invitation. Let's go get tickets. Let's go have fun. I live in Wisconsin, so if you're up here with me, let's go to a concert together, sporting event, whatever it is. Let's get those tickets on Game Time. Let's do more stuff in life. This is your opportunity. And by the way, you don't have to do it with me. Go do it with your wife or your friends or your family too. Go on Game Time. Do more stuff in life. Go get the tickets to events. I just had a coworker who I recommended Game Time to. I gave him this code. He bought hockey tickets. He's going to go check out. Hockey's not a sport I understand. I don't get it, but good for him. And he saved money by getting those tickets on Game Time. Download the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Create the account. Use code LOCKEDONCalls for $20 off your first purchase over at Game Time. Download the tickets without the stress over at Game Time. Okay, let's jump back into this conversation. We got the great GardYourFickel on. It's been on several times. Always get smarter when you're here. My man, where can people find the work that you're doing?
Yeah, on Twitter, X at GardYourFickel. Was doing some YouTube stuff for football. We'll maybe see if we get it back up for basketball, kind of dive into some of the numbers, but that's if you just search Badgers Analytics on YouTube, you can find it there.
Let's talk rotation. So I'm interested. Coming into the year, I felt like this team was deeper. I still feel like this team has been deeper than it has been for several years, even though against Pitt, we really played about 6-7 guys. Blackwell played 37, Tonje played 38. But this team has more bodies. But one of those bodies, Xavier Amos brought in. Most people considered him the high-profile transfer coming in. Probably the starting 4. Really can shoot the ball. Athletic, looks the part. He struggled to find his rotation here. Why do you think the biggest reason Amos has struggled to find those rotations, and where do you think he goes from here?
Yeah, I think the biggest reason is his defense, just from a off-ball standpoint, physicality. He definitely just seems to get lost out there. Definitely in the pick and roll situations, drop coverage. He just doesn't necessarily look comfortable out there, and I think it is impacting his teammates while he's out there. So I think that's kind of the number one reason. And then I think he's just being a little bit over aggressive to compensate for the short stint of his minutes out there, kind of get a little trigger happy with some of the opportunities that he's getting. And I think, compounding errors on the defensive end with not very good shots or quick shots that you can get at any point in time is probably why he's not seeing really long extended periods of time to prove himself.
Well, and definitely a guy who came in, right, the reputation of a sniper. His usage rate on the team is second right now. Like usage rate meaning the amount of times the ball basically ends, you're the decision maker. It's Tonje, Amos, Blackwell. That's tough. Now, I get it, though. He's trying to prove that he can be that guy. Yeah, he can be that stretch four, which his team could use another shooter, certainly. Do you see that changing? Do you think midway through the Big Ten Conference, Amos is getting 15 minutes a game?
Oh yeah, I think you can see the talent. The physicality, I think, is probably another year away, and I would probably say the same thing about Winter of being, close to their peak. But yeah, the talent's there. He actually has shown a pretty decent ability to put the ball on the deck, which at that 4 spot in this offense is another weapon that could be utilized. And I think, right, you look at the physical tools, it's all a mental standpoint from the defensive end. I don't necessarily think there's anything physically holding him back. I mean, he's going to get beat up with some more physical force, but so is Winter. So you're not really seeing much of a trade-off there from a benefit standpoint. But yeah, absolutely. I think there's definitely opportunity for him to see, double-digit minutes on a consistent basis as we get into January, February, and into March.
Well, and let me throw this out there too, because you're right. He's going to get beat up on the interior, but on the perimeter, this team struggles keeping 4s and 5s in front of them. You see that with Crowell. You see that with Winter. Gard has had to play smaller a little bit, which I actually love. I love some of the small ball lineups we can pull out with this team. But this could be, if Amos can grind those minutes up, he, to me, is the perfect type of complement for a big like Stephen Crowell. If he can be consistent with his foot speed and his quickness.
I completely agree. I mean, his ability to floor space, and he's shooting 29% right now, very limited attempts. But yeah, I think he's definitely what I would say is a perfect archetype for this type of offense. Now, I think there's still probably some need to show it competently, putting the ball on the deck and actually, taking some drives to the rim and finishing through contact that we haven't seen yet. But I think that's probably an element of his game that we're going to see in the later part of his Badger career, not necessarily this year, but the ability to space it with an inside presence is exactly what this offense needs.
What else is surprising to you I know I was going to just kind of give you the floor on a bit here from a number standpoint, offense, defense, individual. What's some other trend or some other kind of note you've made and said, that's really interesting. I wonder if in another 15 games, if we're still going to be talking about that.
Yeah, I was just kind of perusing Haslam metrics before this afternoon and saw that we're like top 3 in mid-range attempt rate forced. So, obviously one of the big tenets of Gard's defense is the drop coverage in the pick and roll and trying to force, a lot more mid-range attempts out of that type of action versus, hard hedging, getting into significant help and recover situations, kind of the worst thing that you can put your defense into. So the drop coverage is designed to eliminate a lot of those things and force a point guard or whoever the ball handler is in those situations to make a play. So we've been forcing a lot of mid-range attempts so far this year. If we continue to do that, I actually have a little bit more confidence that our defense is going to improve from where it's at. Obviously, with the Rio Grande Valley, our adjusted metrics are getting a little bit of a ding there from that performance. But, when you've only played 7 games, it's taking a little bit more of the sample size. So outside of that, I think we've done a pretty good job. The one area that we've gotten to the line a good bit. We've also fouled a little bit too much for my liking. So, if I start to see both of those metrics kind of continue, or the mid-range attempt rate go in the wrong direction and the free throw attempt rate go in even more of the wrong direction, because you looked at kind of, our defense fell off a cliff late last year as well, and we fouled a significant amount more in January through March than we did kind of in the first half of the season. So I'd really like to see us stop fouling and continue to force a lot of those mid-range jumpers.
Let me ask you this, man, because it seems like no matter what you want to do as a coach, if you start to emphasize something else is going to slip a little bit, right? You mentioned turnovers are up a little bit from traditional guard levels. Well, you're playing faster. Like if you're playing faster, you're going to probably have a few quicker decisions that lead to a poor pass, a forced dribble. I kind of wonder if it's similar with fouling, right? If you're trying to play a little faster, you're trying to create a little more tempo. If you are going to be a little more, maybe it's a winded thing, just a tick. Like maybe it's just you're trying to get a steal to get out in transition to run to the three in the corner. I think those things are hard to untangle, right? As you increase one, invariably the other one almost increases. Am I crazy there?
No, I don't think you're crazy at all. I think that's human nature. But being good to being second weekend Final Four is being able to kind of have all of those aspects that make a good basketball team. The four factors are the four factors for a reason. They're the most important. So yes, for
people who don't follow that, because a lot of people probably just kind of points, rebounds, steal. Yeah. So the four factors are effective field goal percentage, turnover percentage, free throw attempt rate, and then your offensive and defensive rebounding percentage. So on defense, you want to keep all of those lower except defensive rebounding and turnover rate. You want those higher, and then vice versa for offense. Man, this is great stuff. This one's I could spend an hour with you on these shows. We have to take one more quick break. We're going to come back. I'm going to ask you about Kamari McGee and if he's kind of the secret sauce to this team. And I also want to ask you if we're going to have how realistic it is. Do you think this team is maybe better than it was last year in terms of seeding, like what the ceiling on this team is? I'm curious on both your takes on that coming up next on Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick break for our friends of the show. Also, a quick second just to say thank you to everybody tuning in. Y'all are amazing. Today's episode is brought to you by our incredible friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel is the number one sportsbook for the Locked On Podcast Network, the official sportsbook of the NFL for a reason. The FanDuel Sportsbook gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. I'm a Niners fan, so the NFL is dead to me. Like, that sport sucks. But for the rest of you, it's probably still fun. The Packers just won. That's great. This is an excellent place to place your bets if you're on FanDuel. If you want to bet on just what quarterback the 49ers need to draft next year, whatever it is. Sorry, I'm salty. But visit FanDuel.com to join today. $150 in bonus bets guaranteed if you win your first $5 bet. That's over at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch, make money with FanDuel, the official sportsbook of the NFL. Terms to apply. Again, create your account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. All right, let's jump back into this conversation. We got GardYourFickel in. Again, very, very grateful to have him jump on the show. What is the ceiling of this team? Barring injury, last year was a 5 seed, got bounced in round 1 by JMU. We all remember that. Can this team be a 3 seed?
I think so. I think it's maybe a little early to call that shot. I'd like to see how we match up. We got a real light week this week with Chicago State Saturday, but then we've got Illinois, Marquette, and Michigan. 2 of those games on the road. I think we're going to begin to see a lot more. I mean, all 3 of those teams are hyper athletic and kind of from the metric standpoint, top 30 in KenPom. So I think we're going to really start to see, obviously Arizona is kind of that win may not hold as much water as we may hope. That Pittsburgh team is very good. Obviously they lost that guard who was very good offensive player in what was that, the first 2 minutes of the game. So I think that the ceiling, even kind of taking those caveats into play, I think the ceiling is definitely a top 4 seed for sure. I think 3 seed, I would not say anything higher than a 3 seed though.
Yeah, I think 3 seeds are about where my ceiling is. Well, I think there's interior defensive issues, rebounding issues that are going to crop up and going to cost us some games. I'm still a little curious if at times, if we shoot really poorly, if our defense can play well enough to basically carry the day for us against a good quality opponent. I'm not sure if it can for 40 minutes. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, it was in the second half of Pitt, we were like 1.69 points per possession, which is phenomenal, especially against such a great Pitt defense. But we gave up 1.24. So it's like, kind of this new guard adage of, we just got to outscore them. It's like, okay. I mean, but yeah, to your point, you're not always going to have your offense, and you need some level of stability from a defensive standpoint. In the 2014-15, they weren't a great defensive team, but they were still top 40 in KenPom,
right.
And that's how you win 36 games. Is you've got one elite aspect, but you're not like so mediocre in other areas that you can bite yourself when you maybe have an off night.
I want to ask you about a point you made earlier, because last year our defense was very poor, and it really fell apart towards the second half of the season. But that pick and roll defense, that drop coverage, it wasn't very good. We weren't necessarily creating a ton of mid-range looks for the other team. They were getting to the rim, or they were creating fouls. I think Kamari McGee is one of the keys to that improvement on defense. And Kamari McGee in general has just been an absolute spark plug. But defensively, I feel like he's the guy that you can put in that type of coverage, and he finds a way to get skinny around the pick, get to the guard. I think Crowell's been more active in that sense too. How much of that improvement defensively, early sample size again, how much of that do you put maybe on losing a couple pieces from last year's team that, quite frankly, AJ Starr didn't care a bunch about defense. We know that. Mm-hmm. And then also getting this version of Kamari McGee from the jump.
Yeah, I think I talked about it a lot last year, how the data just seemed to show that with Kamari McGee out on the floor, our defense was just worlds better. And the more I started to, look and dissect our pick and roll defense, he just positions himself better than anybody on the team before the contact occurs with the screen. To your point, getting skinny, just maneuvering himself and allowing the footwork to be just so much more simple to get over the top and fight around those screens, where he's not getting the full contact of the screen, getting back in front, allowing Crowell or whoever is the drop man to relocate their guy, and just every aspect of his on-ball defense, even outside of pick and roll situations, is very good. And I think Blackwell is starting to understand how he needs to do those things as well. And I've been actually very impressed with how he's also kind of improved his kind of pre-action to the actual screen. And it's made his pick and roll coverage better as well. And I think when you play such a unique style of coverage like that, it's very onus on the on-ball defender to fight over the top and get back to avoid kind of the 2-on-1 situation with the drop man. So he's been such a vital piece on the defensive end. He's shot the ball really well also, which helps and keeps him on the floor longer. So I can't say enough good things about Kamari McGee and what he's done for this team, not only this year, but last year as well. And he was sorely missed.
Bigger piece down the stretch for the Badgers. More important piece this year, Janicki or Gilmore?
I think Gilmore. And I say that as a hedge to Amos's development, because if he doesn't develop the way we think, which could very well happen, we need some front court depth that we just don't have. Ilver, that experiment is, I think we can finally put that one to bed. And we need some level of front court depth, because with that added edge of and physicality, he's going to be crucial if Amos can't figure it out on the defensive end enough to overtake him, because the offensive skill from that Amos provides is far and above what Gilmore can provide. We just need to see that flip from a defensive standpoint, where he's good enough where that math checks out.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I would also point out that the composition of this team lends itself better to a guy like Gilmore be able to come in and play 8 minutes than last year's team, where you had a Tyler Wall also. So you might find yourself with 3 people who aren't shooting on the roster. So I think the team plays better with a Carter Gilmore in stretches than it would have last year as well.
And this not a knock on Janicki. I've been thoroughly impressed with him. I think he's probably number 3 in terms of ball screen coverage and overall defensive ability from when you're looking at the guards in particular. I've been very impressed with what he's done. The offense is a little bit quick for him at this point right now, but knocking down open jumpers, and as he continues to get more and more minutes, which I think he's deserving of. I was actually a bit surprised that he got in so late into the first half against Pitt, and it seemed like that hypercharged his aggressiveness a little bit on the offensive, and just so yeah, I think the more he gets involved, the better. But you gotta who's he gonna take minutes from? Probably only Klesmit at this point.
Yeah, I agree with you there. He is the Greg Gard, your fickle. Always humbled to have people like this on the show. Really do appreciate it. We definitely get smarter by having you on. Go check out his content, at GardYourFickel. Also, like you said, search on YouTube, Badger Analytics. This has been Locked On Badgers. Go check out Locked On Big Ten. We're going to hear all the biggest stories in the conference over at Locked On Big Ten channel on Wisconsin, and we will talk tomorrow.